Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Nieland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Today we're continuing with our series, our 5-episode series of the revelations of the dispensations of the time when the truth of God, of the universe, of how we fit into all of this was revealed to us. And we have to understand that many things or many ways what we're doing as a human species is we're discerning and we're understanding, we're evolving our religions to our progression or our progress as a civilization. But there are instances where we have revealed religion, where God and the celestial agencies present information that steers us in the right direction. So in this episode, I'm really excited because we have Derek Grimm again, which I love the way that he presents this. It's he really makes it very clear. I don't know if he's or was, because I know he's not a teacher, but he would have made a great teacher because he trains it really, really good. So we're going to be talking about Jesus. This is very interesting because he is the fourth revelation. But today we're going to step into one of the most profound questions ever asked. Who is Jesus really? Not just a teacher from Nazareth, but the cosmic being behind the story. According to the teachings explored in the Urantia Book, the life of Jesus on earth was part of a much larger narrative, a story stretching back hundreds of thousands of years throughout rebellion, recovery, and preparation from one extraordinary moment in planetary history. In this episode, we're going to explore how Earth's long journey set the stage for his arrival, who Jesus actually is in the universe beyond our planet, and why his life, death, and resurrection still shape the spiritual destiny of humanity today, and not only humanity, but the universe in large. So let's begin. Thanks for visiting once again, Derek. It's a pleasure.
Happy to be back. This is a great topic.
Yes, and I think it's kind of getting to the conclusion and setting the right interpretation of Jesus. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think so too. Absolutely. Yeah.
So before we dive into Jesus, let's kind of make a recap of the story so far of what's been happening. So the story so far and this long road to Jesus is that we have to understand that the world that he arrived on, Earth or Urantia, has a long and complicated spiritual history. According to the broader cosmic narrative, this planet experienced rebellion, broken leadership, and interrupted missions meant to guide humanity's development. From the betrayal of planetary administrators to the struggles of Adam and Eve, the emergency intervention of Melchizedek, humanity's story became one of survival and a spiritual persistence. By the time Jesus was born, the world wasn't simply waiting for a savior. It was a planet that had been holding on to the light of truth for a very long time. So tell us, Derek, what are the circumstances and what is the world that we have?
Okay. Big story.
Yes.
We've spent a few episodes going through the details, but just as a recap, first of all, civilization is meant to be a co-creative process between divinity and humanity. Mm-hmm. And this is accomplished in stages. And we've talked about the first 3 stages that happened the first 2 stages that happened on our planet, and they failed. So the first stage was the arrival of our planetary administration. And the leader of that administration is called a planetary prince. They arrived 500,000 years ago, approximately. And they set up shop in what is now Mesopotamia, and they built a city, and it functioned, and they functioned as planetary administration for 300,000 years. And so 300,000 years. 200,000 years ago, Lucifer decided that he could do things better, and he launched a rebellion. And Lucifer, being the administrator of our local area of inhabited worlds, went to all of the inhabited worlds and tried to get everybody to go along with him. And to his eternal discredit, our leader, his name is Caligastia, in advance betrayed our planet to this rebellion.
Okay.
So basically, cut us all out. Like the result of that, going into rebellion, is that we're quarantined, isolated, and cut off from the rest of the universe and administration, so that it doesn't spread beyond where it already is.
Yeah, it's like a cancer, so it
So
stays into one place and it doesn't infect everything, right?
it's exactly that. Exactly. Yeah, a
Yeah.
cancer. I think that's a really good description.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah, yeah.
spiritual
Well,
cancer. Yeah,
and just to make this a side note, I think everything, and that's the beauty about the universe. I mean, if you look at the patterns and the in models in how things work, we understand that cancer are rebellious cells that are not following their intended process. And what you have to do is you have to extract them, and this is
yeah,
what happens. In different stages. We as humans, as individuals, as a collective as well, if we're not following the plan, then what you do, you isolate and you extract. So this is interesting, and this is a little bit of to put into context of what a rebellion is and how it works,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So we're isolated. It plunged us basically into darkness and confusion. All of the benefits and growth that occurred over the previous 300,000 years gone. Plunged us back into barbarity, basically. Um, there was a visible staff of 100, 100, I guess you could call them superhumans, and
Mm-hmm.
they had 100 associates behind them, and we talked about them. That's the Anunnaki, and their
Mm-hmm.
associates were called the Igigi or Igigi. Um, they split, and they split basically 60-40 among the primary 100, and the 60 went into rebellion, and the 40 stayed loyal to the universe. And the leader of the loyal Anunnaki, his name was Van, and he basically kept the light of truth and civilization going for approximately 160,000 years from then, all the way down to the arrival of the second bestowal, which we spoke about,
Yeah.
Adam and Eve. Now,
Interesting. Yes.
Adam and Eve came. If we're looking back from here, it would be about 38,000 BC, 38,000 years
Okay.
ago. Um, and they had a pretty huge mission ahead of them, right? So, first of all, they were here. They had to somehow try to rescue the planet from this barbarity and confusion and chaos as best they could. They were also here to biologically upstep
Mm-hmm.
the human gene pool, because they were physical beings, but they were divinely created beings, and part of what they do, not just on our planet, on every planet gets an Adam and Eve, but
Yeah.
their purpose is to skillfully and strategically inject their divine DNA genetics into the human gene pool.
Correct.
Yeah. And
And let me
so,
let me make
yeah,
a side note as well here, and because I think a lot of what we know from myth, from urban legends, from things about that are out there, and maybe sometimes that you can't thread them all along. I mean, we talked about superhuman demigods, and we see a lot of that in prehistory there were these superhumans, and in myth how these civilizations came down and everything. So that
yeah,
makes a lot of sense. We know the story of Adam and Eve from the Bible, and I mean, we're clarifying how they were not the first humans, but they had this special mission, and they
yeah,
had brought here the uplifting not only of, in practical terms, but also in biological terms, the genetic gene pool. And also one of the things that we've always, it's been out there is that there was a race of aliens that came here, and they are the ones that we're that byproduct of those aliens that came here. This is the story. These are the aliens, right? That came
yeah,
with that, in
yeah,
a sense.
yeah,
It wasn't that they
yeah,
came in, with the big eyes and the spacecraft and just injected us. It was this story. So it's interesting how, you know, once you take the covers away, once you reveal it, it all makes sense, and it's really practical to understand, right?
yes. And it's all part of a divine plan for
Yeah,
every inhabited planet, right?
correct.
So the way that they do this genetic upstep to the human gene pool is they basically create a huge pool of their own progeny. And once it
Mm-hmm.
gets to a certain level, I think on most worlds it's 1 million, but on our world, they were going to start at 500,000
Yeah.
or 500,000. Yeah. Um, what they do is they basically sort of send them out and selectively start blending with the indigenous races on the planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you said, we were talking about demigods and stuff like that. We have an example in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Gilgamesh is described in his inheritance as being 2/3 God and
Mm-hmm.
1/3 human. So that means that's basically us being told that he's 2/3 Adam and Eve's progeny and 1/3 indigenous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So awesome stuff.
Oh,
I love that.
and
Yeah.
you see
Yeah.
this everywhere. You see in Greek myth, it's all plagued with the world of the gods and then the world of the humans and these demigods that are there. You go to Americas, you go to South Pacific, and there's also these stories of these beings that had superpowers that were able to, kind of organize and coordinate a civilization. So you see it everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome,
Absolutely. Yeah.
awesome.
So we also heard how Adam and Eve defaulted in their mission.
Mm-hmm.
They made some pretty serious mistakes, and that basically robbed them of their immortality, which was essential to the success of this mission of blending their progeny with the indigenous races of the planet. Um, and that was a terrible thing. They were basically degraded to mortals.
Yeah,
Be,
yeah.
and that meant that they were going to die. And they did die. Adam died at, I think it was 530 years old, and Eve died 19 years before Adam did. So they eventually did die. And what this did was it ended 460,000 years
Mm-hmm.
of continuous presence, physical presence of and representation of the spiritual government of our planet.
This is interesting and this is important
Yeah.
because
It,
up to that time, there were gods living among us, divine beings living among us, and if not, being directly responsible for what was happening on the planet, were part of that history. They're involved in
yeah.
that history and steering of humanity
Yeah.
across its evolution. Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Great.
So, yeah.
At this
Without
moment, that ends. That we're left in
it's
the
gone.
darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's this huge hole now, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we're basically wandering around in the dark, not knowing what's going on, really. Eh,
Mm-hmm.
except for our own personal spiritual leadings and things like that, which we'll get
Yeah.
into a little bit more today. Um, so without these overarching Adam and Eve immortal beings to manage all of this, the
Mm-hmm.
civilization as it starts blending with the surrounding peoples starts sinking down to the level of the surrounding civilizations because there's no one to keep holding it up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. To
Because
uplift them.
Adam and Eve are gone.
Yeah.
But before that completely flattens out, um, this blending of Adam and Eve's race we can call them the Adamites, Adam and Eve, Adamites,
Mm-hmm.
and the indigenous races, and then we also spoke about the Nephilim, who are the
Mm-hmm.
descendants of the rebel planetary administration way back 200,000 years ago, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
all start blending and they create this mighty race.
Mm-hmm.
And this mighty race, they're the megalithic builder culture that all of the what do you call them, the ancient astronaut people and Graham Hancock and
Yeah.
those researchers, they're looking at all of the remnants of these megalithic structures that were built, and they're looking for the
The
race of people
The
who,
Göbekli Tepe and all those sites, right?
yeah, yeah, and the pyramids, and
Uh,
the stuff that's in Pumapunku in South America,
yeah.
and there's some stuff in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. It's just all over,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And it's megalithic, like it's made with these stones that we can barely budge today with our machinery and technology. It's pretty amazing stuff. This is the culture that built it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's called the Andite culture in the Urantia
Yeah.
book.
Okay.
So that's the blending, and it blends into this mighty race. And then it starts, because there's no more of Adam and Eve's progeny being produced pure. It starts sinking and blending into the level of the surrounding.
Dissolving, let's say diluting.
Yeah.
All right.
It dilutes. Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Right. So it's the apex of that culture is probably around 15,000 BC or so.
Okay.
That's when it really hit its height and starts really degenerating from there. So during this time, after Adam and Eve die, actually after they defaulted,
Yeah.
the reins of spiritual government fell back into the hands of Melchizedek receivers. And we spoke about the Melchizedeks in the last episode, right?
Yes.
So the Melchizedeks are a divine order of beings. It's not just one guy. It's a divine order of beings. And usually when something goes wrong on a planet or in a system of planets or something like that, it's usually the Melchizedeks who step in to take control and sort of get things going back on the right path.
Correct.
They are considered emergency sons, among other things. Their functionality in the universe is really diverse. They're a very high order of being, and they have their fingers in all the pies, so to speak. So
Yeah.
So when something goes wrong, they're the ones who can really step in and take control and
Yeah.
start getting things back on the right trajectory, right?
Yeah.
So from Adam and Eve dying, say, 37,000 years ago or so, all the way down to about, in our story right about now, we're at 3000 BC.
Yeah.
These 12 Melchizedek receivers who have taken control of the planetary administration are sort of looking at this, right? And they know that Jesus is coming.
Yeah.
Because Jesus has said, I'm going to bestow myself on earth.
Yeah, he chose this planet to be his bestow, which we're gonna get to in the next segment. But yeah, he chose this planet.
Yeah. So they know he's coming, and they're starting to get worried, really concerned, because the level of civilization is degrading, and it's going back into barbarity. And while there's been an upstep evolutionarily and biologically because of Adam and Eve's genetics, spiritually things are really taking a nosedive.
Okay.
And the light of truth on the planet really was at about the level of a glowing ember.
Okay.
There wasn't a flame, it wasn't a bright light, it was almost going out, and they were concerned. So they recognized this crisis. They knew Jesus was coming and he was preparing to come. What are they going to do to help this out, right?
Yeah.
So they decided one of them was going to volunteer to do what's called an emergency bestowal. So this isn't a normal bestowal that's part of the overarching bestowal plan for every planet. This is an emergency intervention. And one of these 12 Melchizedeks physically incarnated on the planet as a looking like a human being, right?
Okay.
And his name was Macaventa. So we know him as Macaventa Melchizedek.
Yeah.
And he's the Melchizedek that everybody knows from the Bible. So now we're talking, they realized this crisis about 3,000 years before Jesus came.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking, this incarnation happened, we're told, 1,973 years before Jesus is born. So it's about
Correct.
2,000 years before Jesus now.
All right.
And he came for two very, very specific reasons. He's not here for the purpose of, uplifting us biologically, and he's not here in the capacity of, doing another kickstart stage to civilization or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
His only purpose was to rekindle the light of truth on the planet, the truth about God the Father,
Okay.
about a monotheistic deity. I think is
Yes.
better to say that than God the Father. That's more of a Jesus thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing was to build some sort of foundation that would be there for Jesus to work with when he arrived. Those are the
Great.
only two things that he was here for.
Okay.
And so very, very limited in scope in terms of what he was here to do compared to what a normal bestowal
And
is,
very
right?
important because if
Yeah,
not, I mean, the sequence of things without the foundation of a monotheistic religion, would have been really hard to, present the teachings. Awesome. Awesome.
exactly. Yeah. So his plan, obviously to rekindle the light, he basically founded a school
Yeah.
in what is now Jerusalem. Back then it was Salem, and he was known as the Sage of Salem. And Abraham was there. He was the star pupil, so to speak, and he ran the, I don't want to say community because it was bigger than that. It was a city.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people there, and he trained missionaries, and he sent them out all over the world. And those missionaries and the things that they taught all over the world become the foundation for all of the things that the Abrahamic religions have in common.
Yeah.
And not just the Abrahamic religions, it's other later religions. There's commonalities in Confucianism, there's commonalities in Buddhism.
Yeah. Because they spread out everywhere.
Yeah.
They took those
And
teachings.
those teachings find their origin way back in Melchizedek.
Awesome.
So incredible influence so he was very successful in rekindling that light, and the light is still very
Yeah.
much shining. In terms of creating this foundation for Jesus to work with, his plan was to have Abraham's descendants
Mm-hmm.
really transform into kind of a spiritual race. I know if
Yeah.
race is the best word, but it's because it's
A
not
brotherhood.
genetically
Let's
speaking
put
so
it
much,
that way.
but
Like a
you know,
brotherhood.
kind of a race.
Yeah. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
brotherhood, kind of a race. But what their purpose was going to be was they were going to be inaugurated by Jesus as these spiritual light bringers and guides, and that would go out to uplift the whole world. Right? That
Okay.
was the plan. That was Melchizedek's plan. Right?
We didn't get there, but far enough to
Yeah,
set the stage for what was going to happen, right?
exactly.
Awesome.
So
Awesome.
that was his plan. So he stayed for about 90 years, and then he felt things were going as good as they could be. Abraham was sort of running things, and he needed to leave well in advance of when Abraham actually died to make sure that things would continue on. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
So,
Well, and because we have to go to the next segment, and I think that's setting the stage for Jesus. So I
yeah,
think we covered
yeah,
everything where we're at before we jump into Jesus, right?
little bit. There's one more
Okay.
thing that we have to
All right.
cover, if that's
Please.
okay.
Yes, yes, please.
So we're talking about these bestowals and this normal bestowal plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so after Adam and Eve, what usually is supposed to happen is towards the end of Adam and Eve's we can call it a dispensation. Their dispensation's about 25,000 to 30,000 years usually, right? Usually towards the end of this age, there's a flowering interest in art, music, literature, a universal interest in intellectual realities like true philosophy. Religion becomes less nationalistic and more planetary.
Okay.
And concrete steps towards true worldwide peace are being taken. So this is on a normal planet now, right?
Yeah.
So this is what it's usually like at the end of Adam and Eve's
And
age
where we're at.
dispensation,
Yeah.
right? And at that point, what the next stage or the next bestowal son who comes is a divine being who comes directly from paradise, the
Okay.
central universe, right from paradise. And the mission is called a magisterial mission. This is a magisterial son who comes. And they it's like another stage of the rocket, and they just kickstart things even more, right? And that's the whole idea of sending a series of bestowals is you've got your first stage and it keeps going. Second stage kickstarts it even more. Third stage even more. So that's what's supposed to happen. But obviously 2,000 years ago, we weren't in that position at all, were we?
So we had a special dispensation instead of the regular dispensation, let's say.
Yeah. So even before Jesus now, who we're going to start talking about, we've already had an emergency bestowal to prepare for a special bestowal.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's the thing. Well, awesome. This really sets everything up, and well, stay tuned and we're going to find out what's happening. Most people know Jesus as a spiritual teacher, prophet, or religious figure, but the cosmic perspective tells a much larger story. In the universe described in the Urantia Book, Jesus is known as Michael of Nebadon, a creator's son, a being who, together with the Divine Mother Spirit, helped create and sustain an entire universe of inhabited worlds. His life on Earth was not random. It was the final step in a series of bestowals required for a creator's son to fully understand the beings of his creation. Out of the millions of worlds, our planet became the stage for that final mission. The moment when the creator of a universe chose to live as one of us. So, very interesting topic, very interesting situation, and we've kind of seen the evolution and the story of the world. And Jesus of Nazareth, whom we know here on earth, but who is really known in the universe as Michael of Nebadon, also has a history. He has to have this situation where he has to have incarnations, bestowals in the different creatures that he created. And he chooses the situation in the world that we're at and his bestowal to come together and set the stage for what you're going to tell us. So please, Derek, begin your story.
All right. So we're going to be diving deeply into who Jesus actually is when he's not here on earth. So as you said, he is the member of a divine order of beings hailing directly from paradise, called a creator son or a Michael son. And we'll get into why they're that order is called that in a sec. But they come directly from paradise. So we know, at least from a Christian point of view, we know Jesus as the Son of God, but in actual fact, he is a Son of God. You could say in our area of the universe that he created, he is the Son of God. You could kind of say that. You could get away with saying that. But technically speaking, he's a Son of God.
Because we're all sons of God, right?
Well, okay, yeah, you can say that too.
So it's a type of son, right?
Yes. Okay, so the differentiation here is that he is not the second part of the Paradise Trinity. He is not the eternal Son, which is how he is characterized by Christianity, right? So he is the representative in the inhabited universe of both the universal Father and the actual eternal Son,
Okay.
in the part of the universe that he has created. Now,
Exactly.
what do I mean by that he is created? Okay, so that's why he's called a creator son. He is a creator. So each creator son goes out into the universe with his consort and partner. You mentioned that already. This is divine mother spirit. Okay. And the divine mother spirit is the representative of the infinite spirit.
Which is the
So
third
the
person of the
paradise
Trinity.
Trinity, right?
Yeah.
Universal Father, eternal Son, infinite Spirit. Okay?
Yes.
So creator sons represent the Father and the Son, and the mother spirits represent the infinite Spirit. Okay?
Awesome.
So these two beings, this
This union, yeah.
incredibly, they're a partnership, like, but it's so much more than a partnership, right?
Yeah.
They go out and they find a region of space. It's kind of like a predetermined, by other beings.
They have their lot
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
universe, as you would
They
get your
have
lot.
a lot. Yeah, get a lot, right? Yeah, where they can build a house.
Exactly.
But they actually settle down and they go about creating that part of the universe. Like we're talking all of the stars and all of that, and they get all of that going, and their goal is to create an eventual to create and sustain enough stars and star systems to have upwards of 10 million inhabited worlds, an eventual total of 10 million inhabited worlds with people like us.
Okay.
Okay. There are in this divine order 700,000 creator sons who have gone out into the inhabited universe, and there are 700,000 areas in the inhabited universe that each of
And
these sons.
let me
Yep,
make a
go
side
ahead.
note so we can
Yep,
understand. You have
yep,
paradise, which is the central universe. That's where
yes,
God resides. That's
yep,
where everything is perfect. That's created in perfection. So
yep,
these beings come from this Isle of Paradise, from this central universe,
yep,
into the larger universe, what I call the universe of time and space, which are imperfect, and that's why they're imperfect, because we're part of
that's
this,
where we are.
and
Yep,
we're going from potential to actual. We're part of this evolution, and we're co-creating.
yeah,
So yeah, go ahead,
yeah.
continue, Derek.
That's actually a really awesome story in itself, the whole universe as a time and space and all of that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll just, a lot of people ask the question, why didn't God create us perfect? And the answer to that really quickly is, well, he's already done that. He created a whole universe of perfect beings. We're not part of that. We're part of the other, another whole different experiment
exactly.
where we are created in potential perfect, but it
Depends on us. It's our
well,
choice to be perfect or to evolve,
no,
right?
we're perfect except for the imposition of time.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
time for us and experience are necessary for us to get to that eventual
Perfection.
level of perfection for us. That's
Exactly.
our adventure. Um, there's already been the adventure of being perfect in the central universe. So that's a
Exactly.
good
This is
way to
I love
encapsulate
that.
that.
I love
Yeah,
that because yeah, and that's what time is. And sometimes we view time as this we clock it, right? But those are just mechanisms that we measure time. But really, time is just this potential to actual, what is
yeah,
there, and we're in the decisions in the everyday moments that we're participating in the experience, as you said. We're becoming part of that perfection or going towards perfection of these universes, right?
right,
Awesome,
exactly.
awesome. So
Yeah.
tell us more,
So
Derek, please.
yeah, so there's 700,000 of these creator suns spread out all over the universe level of time and space. and they are cooperatively, making all of the star systems and creating all of the planets and all of that evolutionarily. And the goal is to have in each one of these areas controlled by a specific creator sun and mother spirit. There's 10 million inhabited worlds. That's the goal of each one of these areas that they create and administer to. Okay. So there's other levels of organization above that, but that's a little bit beyond what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So, as you also mentioned, as part of them creating this area, it's called a local universe. They can't just sort of sit there and go, okay, I am the total sovereign of this, and we're done. The Paradise Trinity, the Paradise existential deities in Paradise, require of each creator son to experience what it is like to live as each one of the orders of beings that the creator son actually creates in his own local universe. So we're talking about, we've already spoken about Melchizedek's. We talked about Adam and Eve, who are material sons and daughters. We haven't talked too much about angels, but angels are definitely in there. Like
Archangels as well.
Archangels and seraphim and cherubim. There's tons of different orders of angels. We've got the administrative order of divine beings, which is Lenon and Dex, and that's who Caligastia and Lucifer are. So, that's another order of being that he's created. And there's also another who are actually the Most Highs. So Melchizedek was saying, I am a priest of the Most Highs. He was talking about another order of divine beings who are above the Lenon Index, and they're called Verandidex, and they actually administer to a much larger portions of the local universe. I think that's all we need to say.
Yeah,
about
like their
them for now.
jurisdiction. If we're looking at, and this is interesting because the models that we have on Earth, we see it in the models of the universe. It kind of starts to replicate, but we can see that they're more like of a federal level, and the others are more of a state level, right?
Yes, excellent example.
Right.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely. Yeah. So, but they are actually, in the Bible, it talks about, the Most High's rule in the kingdoms of men. Those are actually Verandidex. It's the Most Highs. So creator sons are required to experience the life of each of these orders of being.
And by the way, one of those beings is human beings, right? We kind
that's
of
the
left
last
that.
one.
That's the last one, right?
Yeah. So there's seven orders of beings that he actually these creator sons have to experience, and there's a career that they go through where they bestow themselves, going down the ladder, so to speak, right? Until the very, very last one that they experience is the most fraught with danger, I guess, in a way, because they're not just incarnated as an angel or one of these divinely created beings.
Non-material beings, let's say.
No, they are born as babies.
In this case, in the
and then
human
they
experience.
have to be reared, and they have to go through the whole human experience from being born as babies and raised as kids all the way through, adulthood, and then they have to eventually die. And that's part of the experience that is required of these creator sons before they can become full sovereigns of their own creations. And at such point, they become what's called a master son rather than a creator son. But that's just terminology, right?
Yeah. So they have now the full sovereignty of their creation, and this is
right.
I really love this because it sets the moral stage for everything else. So if it's required for for this creator son that comes from paradise to live and experience the life of his creatures, how important that is in order for you to judge them, to understand them, to,
Yeah.
be part of them. You have to live their life. And how important for us, as human beings, that every interaction that we have that empathy. We put ourselves in that person. If that was something that I take a lot from this concept of this, or the bestowals. How can you really understand somebody or judge somebody if you haven't been in their shoes? I mean, live their lives,
Yeah.
live their situation, and then you might be able to understand their situation. So this is
Yeah.
really, really interesting.
And
Awesome.
it works both ways as well, right? So
Yeah.
like we know that Michael, our creator son's name is Michael, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, as Jesus, he experienced everything that we go through in life and more. Like he was pretty brutally murdered, right? Um,
Exactly. And this is, let me make another side note. This is, I mean, we know bits and pieces from the Gospels. And again, and this is a disclaimer, we're not here to substitute
yeah,
or to do out with the Gospels. On the contrary, I think that
no,
once you have the full, I mean, it's like having the bits and pieces once you have the full account, you can better understand that. But yes, I mean, it's
yeah,
really important to understand that Jesus had to go through what we all live, and that as
yeah,
long as we do not understand that human nature of Jesus, it's going to be really hard to really understand his nature, his what he really did on earth. So I
yeah,
really invite
yeah,
everybody to look at that account. You don't have to read the Urantia book. There's now a lot of secondary works. We put out something that's
yeah,
pretty interesting called discoverjesus.org. You can visit that. There you can navigate and you can find the full picture at your own pace through your own way of discovering him. So really
that's
understand
right.
that, and the more that you see these, we have another UB podcast that also talks about his life. So there is very practical ways of getting to know Jesus in
Yeah,
his full life. So
yeah.
just an announcement and disclaimer, and go ahead, continue, please,
No,
Derek.
that's really important. So, that's the thing. Like, not only does he intimately understand us because he's lived as one of us, but
Hmm.
we know that he understands us. So it kind of works both ways. He totally understands us, but we know that because he lived as one of us, that he
Yeah.
gets us,
Totally. I love that.
right?
It's a
Yeah,
kind of a cliche, but it's really, he gets us because he was part of us. He understood
yeah,
what pain is, what, being nailed to a cross is. Imagine that.
yeah,
We sometimes can try to figure that out, but he lived it, and he
yeah,
was the creator son. He was the God
yeah,
of our, or is the God of our existence.
exactly. Yeah. So he came here. Like our bestowal plan is so messed up. Really. Um, we're supposed to have this magisterial son come, and then after a magisterial son comes, and they're here for like, I don't know, like 50,000 years, or I can't remember the amount, but then the next bestowal after that is what's called a bestowal son.
Hmm.
And that bestowal son is again a really, really high divine being who comes straight from paradise. And that bestowal son in that mission is born as a child and lives the life of as a human.
Yeah.
So Jesus is actually, when he came here as a bestowal son. And a lot of the reason for that is because of his requirement that
Yeah.
he actually had to live the whole life. So he's coming as a bestowal son, but in
So
terms
so then let's say
terms of
that's one of his first, or because I want to mention this, then there's
yeah,
like
there's
very
other ones
specific
that we're going
missions.
to
I mean,
talk about.
this
Yeah,
was one,
yeah,
complete his personal trajectory of becoming full sovereign of his universe, right? That's one.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But the other thing is that usually that kind of bestowal is way ahead of what we are. Like
Yeah.
we're talking almost a utopia on a planet at that
Yeah.
level. So, um, the other thing that needs to be mentioned is that as the creator son who has to do this, he bestows himself as a mortal on a planet He chooses one planet to do that out of his whole creation of up to 10 million worlds, instead of a usual bestowal son who comes from paradise to do this.
Yeah.
So one world out of the whole potential 10 million gets this special honor of having their creator son bestow himself on their planet, and we're
Yeah.
that. Who's got
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
thumbs and got that honor?
Yeah. We have
Yeah,
that honor.
right,
Correct.
right. So in his whole creation, we've kind of become this special shrine, having been blessed as 1 out of 10 million,
Mm-hmm.
which is, it's really hard to fathom exactly how special that actually is, right, for us,
Yeah.
because we just don't know anything. But
Yeah.
we're told, and if you think about it, huge honor. But I mean, before we let that inflate our heads too much, we have to remember exactly how we treated him
Yeah. Exactly.
when he was here. So, uh, that can keep us humble, I think. So the
Yeah.
last thing that we have to differentiate with Michael as a creator son and who he actually is, Jesus, he is not the archangel Michael. So
Okay.
a lot of people, when they hear the name Michael, they automatically equate that with the archangel Michael, and that's not who we're talking about here when we say Michael. I'm only speculating here, but the archangel who calls the resurrection is called the archangel of Michael,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that could possibly be a source of conflation and confusion down through the centuries, where it's not a leap of logic in my mind, at least, to go from an archangel of Michael just
True.
to
Yeah.
Archangel Michael, right?
Yeah.
But basically, what we're trying to get out of this is that they're not the same. There is no
Okay.
Archangel Michael. It's Michael, our creator son, who is the representative of the Father and the Son directly from paradise, who is our creative father brother.
Got it.
And
Okay.
he's our creative father because he created all of this area of the universe that we live in, and he's our brother because he lived with us as Jesus.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So what was his mission when he came here?
Yeah.
So we talked about his seventh and final bestowal as one of us in order
Mm-hmm.
to claim his full sovereignty over his creation, and that elevated his status from being a creator son,
Mm-hmm.
as we've talked about that term, and now he's a master son because he's completed all of his required bestowals.
Okay.
So this bestowal served a dual purpose. It revealed God to man. That's one of the things he came to do, is a greater revelation of God to us,
Okay.
as all of the major dispensational bestowals are supposed to do. It's this idea that we've been talking about. It's blowing up the balloon, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you start small. Okay, this is a God that you can understand, and as you grow and your capacity to understand grows, you blow up the balloon and you reveal a
Yeah.
little bit more of God. And so this
Yeah.
is again what's going on here. So he's revealing God to man through Jesus' example and teachings. And this is where you get the shift of the Old Testament idea of God, who's this vengeful and jealous God, to the New Testament God of love, right?
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
the other purpose that a lot of people don't recognize is that at the same time, it also revealed man to God.
Which is very important, and this is the human life of Jesus that we have to really understand to get all of this, you know?
That's right. So God through Jesus' experience is really, really learning what it's like to be man
Yeah.
or humans, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a dual purpose. It's revealing God to man and man to God at the same time through Jesus living this life as one of us. It's
Awesome.
really important. So what that means is, and we've already sort of touched on this through the other episodes and dispensations, but there's no sacrifice, there's no atonement, there's nothing that we've talked about that remotely suggests that there should be any sacrifice or atonement for anything. Adam and
Exactly.
Eve are divine beings who failed. We didn't fail.
And they didn't, when they weren't banished by God from any paradise, they just had to leave
No,
the physical
that
grounds
was,
where they were to
yeah,
another place because of very down to earth situations that they were causing internal conflicts. So there
consequence
wasn't
of their
any,
actions. Yeah,
exactly, there wasn't anything there. Yeah, true,
that's
true.
right. And we talked about Melchizedek coming, and his covenant is you get your favor from your faith in God. God's favor smiles down on you through your faith, not in burnt offerings and sacrifice. That was one of the
Yeah.
three main things that Melchizedek taught. So this idea of the fall of man, it's just not. It's
It's
false.
yeah, it is false, and no
Yeah,
wonder why a lot of people are shying away from these ideas, and if I mean from the dogmas, traditions, religions. I don't want to. Again, this is not attacking anybody, but I mean these things
yeah,
that do not make sense. That when you
it
understand
doesn't.
them, and you look at that, and it's just clarifying. You're not taking Jesus away and discarding with him. You're just understanding that he was not a blood sacrifice, but he had this mission in one part, and he had, I mean, many missions, and then the other part was the revelation of God as a father. So that makes a lot of sense. So that is something that I can understand, and I can really follow that instead of saying, okay, we have to go and give praise to this being that came to die here for our sins. What sins? Doesn't make
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. So
Awesome.
you could,
So
yeah,
tell me.
yeah, you could say that rather than the fall of man, which everybody talks about, Adam and Eve, the fall of man, um, it was Adam and Eve's fall to man. They
Hmm.
became mortal.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
again, it's just semantics in a way, but it's really important.
The
And
implications
this
of
idea,
semantics.
yeah, this idea that their transgression brought sin into the world. That's not right either, because we know that the actual sin was the betrayal of our planetary leader, of our whole planet, to
Yeah.
the rebellion. That was the original sin.
Which we understand is a specific incident of this part of the universe, and it's not a dual power of nature, of the God's nature and the devil's nature. There's a balance. No, no, no. God is beyond that. And this is
That's right.
something that when you
Yeah,
understand that, it's not that there's this hell and there's this heaven. No, no, no. God is everywhere. There's no
yeah,
hell. There's just this guy and these bunch of guys that rebelled.
yeah.
As simple as that.
And they've messed us all up.
And they messed us all up.
Yeah,
It's very, very simple, very, very simple.
yeah.
So,
Kind of
can
simple,
we,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So can we stop there, or anything before we go to our next segment, which is what Jesus
no,
did?
there's
So,
a bit more, if that's
all
okay.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
So no problem.
So the purposes of his mission, right? So we're revealing God to man and man to God.
Hmm.
And then secondly, he actually came here to officially put an end to the
That's
Lucifer
right.
rebellion itself.
Yeah.
So the thing that really makes that really powerful is that he didn't put an end to the Lucifer rebellion as Michael, the ruler and creator of our local universe. He did it as Jesus, a mortal who is the lowest on the ladder of beings created in
Awesome.
our universe, who have the ability to connect to spirit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a lowly mortal, he was able to put an end to the Lucifer
He
rebellion. And
confronted this being,
that's
as
right.
the
Yeah,
simplest or more fragile of all the creatures that he could have been. Right.
that's right. So that was accomplished during what's recorded in the Bible as the 40 days and the temptation.
Yeah.
That's not a very accurate record of what actually happened, but
Good enough.
Lucifer was there, and all of the main actors in the rebellion were there and made visible to him, and he said no. As immortal, he defeated them,
Yeah.
and finally and officially put an end to it. So that was the second reason he came. And the third reason he came was to fulfill the duties of this advanced dispensational bestowal, the bestowal son bestowal, and giving our planet another bestowed son of God, right? And
Yeah.
a bestowal son, as we said, is always born as a mortal, and living life, a full life as a divine mortal is the mission of a bestowal son, not a magisterial son who we talked about before. So we kind of skipped over that. There are benefits to, there are things that we've got now that we wouldn't have had if it had been a magisterial mission. And I think it's important to talk about those really quick before we go into the next segment.
Sure.
It's not until a bestowal son comes, and that's way down the line here, that there is an universal outpouring of thought adjusters to every individual person on the planet.
Okay.
Until that time, and we haven't really talked about thought adjusters. Thought adjusters are better thought of as divine fragments of the universal Father who indwell each one of us.
It's the divine within, right?
It's the divine within. That's exactly what it is. And the universal outpouring and indwelling of these divine fragments doesn't actually happen until a bestowal son comes, finishes his bestowal, and then, like happened on Pentecost, there's also an outpouring of the Spirit of truth, which is basically the spirit of that bestowal son outpoured onto the whole earth. And that's what Jesus did. So the Spirit of truth on our planet is the Spirit of Jesus himself.
Very important.
That can touch and communicate. Exactly. And because of the presence of that Spirit of truth, that allows all of the divine fragments to come and indwell each of us. So on our planet, right now, it's usually in between 5 and 6 years old that a divine fragment comes and indwells a person.
Very important. And this is, I think, we're of course, I mean, we're going to be here for the long run, and we're going to have to talk about the thought adjuster and all this process because it's very interesting and something, the other day I had a conversation with Elena from here from Spain, and she's a doctor, and we talked about the mind and how important it is to understand the mind, and that there's a component beyond just the physical that is really a spiritual circuit. That's why it's so elusive to a lot of the researchers. That why can't we really neck on what the mind is? Because we can't understand that spiritual element that is in there. So this is really important that we understand all this, and that way we understand better what's happening to us. I mean, how do you know that you have a stomach ache or a toothache or a headache if you don't know what's happening? Once you know about what's happening inside of you, then you know if you take this medicine, if you do this exercise, if you do that, things are set. And it's spiritually the same thing. If you do not understand what is happening within your world, then it distorted. And here in the story of Jesus, if just by clearing the slate and putting things, in the right place of, it wasn't a sacrifice, but rather he had these missions, and how different that is, it's completely different. So I think we're done in this part. We're going to the next part.
One last thing.
Good.
Yeah. So I think it's also really important when we look at Jesus and the things, even in the Bible, that has been recorded that he said and talked about, we have to remember that even though he bestowed himself here on our planet, he was bestowing himself and teaching and talking for his whole universe.
Yeah. We're this stage, but the audience is the entire universe he created.
Exactly.
True.
So it's also for the millions of other worlds and celestial beings who the whole time he was here had their eyes glued on this planet and us and everything that was going on.
We were the reality show of the moment, right?
Exactly. And not only all of that, but it's also for those in the future looking back.
Yeah. Everything that happens here, this is very important, is recorded. Every action that we do, especially in this rebellion-ridden world, that's why Jesus came here. Everything that we do because of our particular situation, because of this particular situation that you mentioned of having the spirit of truth, the thought adjusters, everything that's happening, we're very particular and everybody's taking note of what we do. So any small triumph that we have as individuals, as in a collective humanity, is very important and has ripples throughout the entire universe. This is true of this planet.
So it actually makes knowing this, that it's that he was teaching to other planets and other people, not just us, makes a couple of the things that he said a little bit more understandable, because some of the things he said were pretty mysterious, right?
Yeah.
So I have two examples of that. One is he said, "In my Father's house there are many mansions." And that really could be interpreted as alluding to all of the other worlds or sheep in his flock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And there's another interpretation of that, mansion worlds, which are kind of where we go after we die, but that's not for this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that really drives this home, and this is a direct quote from Matthew, I think it's Matthew 10, verse 34. He said, and I'll read this so I get it right, "Do not think I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword." And you sit there and you go, what does that mean, right? I've always wondered. On a normal world, the mission of a bestowal son at that level, like we've already talked, it's skipped, right? It's almost a utopia, right? A bestowal comes to inaugurate basically the era of world peace and brotherhood of mankind. That's what they usually come to do. Jesus here is acknowledging that his arrival and bestowal is not going to bring this peace that usually comes with a bestowal son. It gets worse. After he says that, he says, "For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law." And, I get the in-law stuff. But, but he was obviously, like, very clearly saying that this was not going to end like a normal bestowal son mission. And I guess it's my opinion that statements like these, if you sort of step back and see it in this bigger sort of perspective of he's saying this isn't going to be like a bestowal son mission. There's going to be a lot of fighting and discord because of the things that I'm saying, which are probably a little bit too early for the people on this planet. But I'm here because they get the thought adjusters and they get the spirit of truth now when they really, really, really need something. Yeah. And that's I think a good place to land at the end of this segment.
Awesome. I mean, it's really, I think we covered up what really who Jesus is and what he does here. So stick around. Now we're going to see what his life and how it changed everything. Once we understand who Jesus is and the long history that led to his arrival, his life on earth takes an entirely new meaning. His message was simple but revolutionary: the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of humanity. His life demonstrated love, service, forgiveness, and faith lived in action. And the cross, often misunderstood, becomes not a transaction for sin, but the ultimate revelation of divine love in the face of fear and violence. The resurrection then becomes the affirmation of a greater reality, that life continues beyond death and that every human being carries with him the potential for eternal spiritual growth. So tell us about this life of this Creator Son and this interesting planet, Derek.
Yeah, we talked about Melchizedek being really the rock bottom where things really start moving in a positive direction from Melchizedek onwards, right? And Jesus is where it really hits the road. So just to preface what we're going to be talking about here now, Melchizedek's vision for Abraham's descendants was that when Jesus finally arrived, they were going to be all ready to basically be commissioned and inaugurated to go out as a spiritual race of light bearers of truth and guides for the rest of our planet, right? And as we mentioned, that did not happen. And you got to ask why. What happened? Why didn't it work? And I think the short answer to that is Caligastia happened, as always. We have to keep in mind that even though Melchizedek, a really, really high order of being, came here and set all of this in motion, all until Pentecost, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but all of the rebels were still here. All of the rebels were still on the planet. And they were actively working against all of these plans, even that Melchizedek had like put in place, right? And so they were doing everything they can to manipulate, twist, and distort it. And there was a lot of times in that 2,000-year history between Melchizedek and Jesus where it was easier to do this. And the two main places in that history are probably the Egyptian captivity, and then the wandering in the desert with Moses, and then the Babylonian captivity. And I think the Babylonian captivity was especially hard. It was just devastating as a national people. Like it totally destroyed them. They were just back in captivity again, right? Like when is this promised person coming? And when's the Messiah coming? During the Babylonian captivity is when a lot of the books of the Bible, at least the Old Testament, were actually written down rather than being word of mouth handed down. And they changed some stuff to bolster their nationalistic pride, I guess. And that's the time when Abraham was elevated above Melchizedek and things were changed and things like that. So there's this twisting and all of that. And then, in and out of that, Caligastia is in somebody's ear saying, this word instead of that word. And the result of that is by the time Jesus arrives, rather than this motivated, spiritualized generation of and race of people ready to go out and be commissioned by Jesus, you have this twisted and distorted, nationalistic, crystallized institutional barrier to Jesus when he arrives. It's become an actual barrier to the plan and what Michael is saying. So
I think it's important to make this note here, Derek, that as you're saying, the purpose was to have this basis to work off of, but that as anything divine that comes through human hands, most likely because we're imperfect, it becomes distorted. And in
yes,
many cases, as we can see it with many religions, basically all of them, when they, instead of being live and adapted to each individual, they become dogmatic, they become law, they can become strict.
yeah,
They constrict the human growth and the spiritual potential. And this is what happened, and this is what eventually crucified Jesus,
yeah,
basically, this
yeah,
situation. All right, so
yeah.
please
It
continue.
had crystallized and become such a barrier that they actually outright rejected him.
Yeah, definitely.
I
Okay.
think I can say that without it being a spoiler. Everybody knows.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
We
Yeah,
know how
yeah,
that ends. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So what did Jesus actually teach when he was here? And I think it's really important to really focus on his teachings rather than on him so much. I think
Hmm.
Christianity is, we could talk about that next episode, but it's more of a religion about Jesus, and I think we really need to speak a little bit more about the religion of Jesus, if you know what
What
I
he
mean by that,
believed
right?
in.
What
What he
he taught
believed in.
us, what he came
Yeah,
here to say, right?
yeah.
So we can sum his teachings up into a few really good talking points, I guess. The
Okay.
first and most important thing that if we say nothing else in all of these episodes, the most important thing is the realization of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man.
Correct.
So we are all brothers and sisters under the fatherhood of God. And that's not just in our communities, in our cities, in our nations, in our planet. It's all of the planets all over the universe, in the 700,000 local universes that are being created. We are all brothers and sisters under the fatherhood of the universal Father.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever level you want to look at that on, it's exactly the same, no matter.
And
And
this is let me point out, this is
yeah,
important because a lot of people say, okay, aliens and these adversities and people, these. If we understand this, that the purpose is that all beings are of this family, then it's a good universe. It's the nature of the universe, and the
that's right.
purpose of the universe is good. So this is really important
Yes.
to understand, right? And
Yes,
the influences that we have around us, angels and whatnot, are here to help us, not to harm us. I mean, of course, we have these rebels that are large and that we have. I mean, they can influence, but they cannot overpower your will, right?
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's, yeah. Um, so basically, our task is to take this seemingly, well, right now it's an intellectual sort of theoretical idea. We're brothers and sisters under the fatherhood of God. Okay. So how do you turn that into a deep-seated truth that underlies our whole planetary civilization, which then becomes our nature? That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
And, we're going to get a lot of help uh, getting to that point over the centuries and millennia that it'll probably take. But that's the goal
Yeah.
right there,
Yeah. Definitely.
fundamentally. So again, if nothing else comes of all of our podcasts and talks, fatherhood of God, brotherhood of man. That's
Yeah.
it right there in a nutshell. But he did talk about other stuff. So
Yeah.
we talked and came down really heavily on Melchizedek and his covenant last time. He made this special covenant between divinity and humanity. And that covenant was basically that um, all you have to do is believe. God agrees to do everything. All we have to do is believe and follow the teachings of those he sends to us.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
That was the covenant. That's our special covenant with divinity for us on the planet because of all of the stuff that's happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, again, with this being a advanced revelation of God and religion and the cosmos of everything, and the balloon is getting bigger and bigger, Jesus is going to build on that, right? And so he comes along and he says, yes, that is exactly the case. But belief will get you in the door of the kingdom. But if you want to stay there, you have to have faith and you have to exercise that faith. So the way I look at that is that belief is kind of like almost an intellectual level, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, um, you know, there's God and his sons come and he gives us the 10 commandments and we have to live this way. And so you can really take that belief intellectually, but you really have to internalize it and for it to become something you can act on. That's faith,
Definitely.
right? And that's the difference that I think
That's
Jesus is
banking.
talking about. That's
That's
what?
banking on that belief, right?
That's right. So you have to transform your belief into an act of faith. And once you are able to do that, you're basically a universe citizen for
Yeah.
eternity. So that's how he built on this covenant from Melchizedek.
And let me make a note here, Derek. I think it's important, as you're saying, and people might be reflecting on, okay, how can I enact that faith? How can I take that leap of faith? And that's what it is. It's a leap of faith. And many times life is giving us the opportunities to enact that faith which is hard. If it was
It's
easy, you could
super
just,
hard. Yeah.
you could just do it anytime, any day,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
hard. And that life situations that are going to put in front of you are some of the hardest situations, and the ones that you think about the consequences, which are the hardest, and they're the most difficult ones. But once you see and you have that faith, and you know that what's being presented to you, if you are willing, looking for truth, beauty, truth, beauty, and goodness, and anything that is loving. I mean, your heart is set on and getting that consequence instead of something nefarious, and you take that leap of faith, it's going to ultimately transform you, because that faith, that belief, then becomes alive, and you have to go through that process in order for it to be activated. So my suggestion here, or my invitation, is never lose a good moment to go forward and enact that faith, live that
Yeah.
faith in those situations that life brings you.
Amen. That's a great invitation. I think I'll take that myself. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. So, so he really expanded that covenant, and
Hmm.
and that's super important. I think one of the other things that he did that was extraordinary was he really transformed our planetary understanding of the nature of God.
Exactly.
And that's why we have an Old Testament and a New Testament, because the difference is so striking, right? You've got this jealous, vengeful, national
Wrathful.
deity, basically, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly we're talking about a universal father who
Yeah.
loves his children. And
Yeah, that's
that's
why the,
just,
the the atonement is not compatible.
no,
It's
it's not.
yeah, and that's something from the Old Testament. That's from the wrathful God. This God is
Yeah,
a father. Which
yeah,
father? And that's another. The other day I talked about this with Chris Lapine. It's like if you were saying, okay, so this son of mine did this wrong, so I'm going to have this other son of mine kill him in a brutal way so that you can be spared.
right.
Okay, and this is doesn't make sense for a human.
No, it
How
doesn't
can it
when
make
you think
sense
about it.
how can it make sense for an all loving, almighty, powerful God if He sets the rules, and okay, the rules are going to be that I have to kill you in order to save this guy? What the hell, man?
Yeah,
It doesn't make
exactly.
sense,
Yeah.
right?
But that touches on another part of this is the Old Testament and the New Testament are so different. So how do you reconcile that, right? Did God change? No. That's the key thing right there, is it's not God that changed. It's our understanding of God, our understanding of the nature of God, that changed. And that is exactly the purpose of these bestowals, and
Exactly.
the paradise sons of God coming and upstepping our understanding of it all. And so there's no problem with that. Basically, if you're of the mind that, um I don't know if I want to get into this too deeply, but you know biblical inerrancy, how do you account for it then?
Yeah,
Did God change his mind? God can't change his mind. He's eternal.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's changeless. It's us that changed. It's our understanding that changed. And that's what the Bible shows us. It shows us
True.
how our understanding changed. Yeah. Anyway, we
Oh,
don't
this
want
is
to
this is
get on
very
that
good,
too much,
Derek.
but yeah,
No, 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 but this is good
yeah,
because then we understand, and I mean, I see that this is something that we can understand because it's in our history, and it's in our recorded history. The
that's
Bible,
right.
the Old Testament, the New Testament. I mean, prior to that, although that what happened and what we're learning in these podcasts, I mean, it wasn't really recorded. We have fragments and we have legends and whatnot, myth. But here we have that clear evolution of what a revelation, a dispensation, or a bestowal is. It's setting the record straight. And we see that happening in the Bible, where we leave that wrathful, vengeful God in the Old Testament and come to a loving Father concept in the New Testament, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Awesome, awesome. I like it.
exactly.
And then we're
Yeah,
going to find out, this is for the future. The next podcast that we're going to be doing is on the fifth revelation, and why all this information that Derek and I use. It's not that we went over there and went to the desert or into a mountain and really got enlightened. It's really that we read this.
No.
It's really
Yeah.
something that we read from.
Yeah.
It's like going into a textbook
Yeah.
and understanding how the atoms and protons and neutrons and whatnot work, and that's it.
That's right.
That's simply it. But
Yeah,
please continue,
exactly.
Derek.
Yeah. So I think in terms of really significant things that he taught, the last one that I'll touch on today is, and it's kind of to the discredit of the early church leaders, but I kind of feel that in saying that it's easy to be critical in hindsight as well. So, and they were a product of their culture, despite Jesus's example. But Jesus not only taught the equality of the sexes, but he showed it in practice. We know that there was 12 male disciples, but there was 12 female disciples too, and they were commissioned just the same way as the 12 male disciples were commissioned.
Yeah.
And the reason that I say is to the discredit of the church leaders is because that got erased.
Yeah. It's so important, and even today, so relevant today,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
these 12 female leaders of the early church, they were so instrumental and foundational in even when Jesus was here. They helped run the camps. They helped minister to all of the people who were coming to the camps for healing and for help, and they ran it all. They were the foundation of the early Christian communities.
Definitely. And we know
So
about the
important.
females, of the female traits that are so fundamental for this community building. And that's something that we do not give so much credit. We just, have these
Yeah.
instances of Mary Magdalene. But you come to think of it, the first persons that Jesus appeared to were these
They
women.
were the women.
So they're really
Yeah.
fundamental in this story.
That's right. Yeah. And, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but that's information that the Urantia Book gives back to us, which I
Yeah.
think is crucial. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So those are the main things that I'll talk about today that he taught. I think they're the most fundamental. But
Awesome.
I think maybe
Derek.
we should talk a little bit about what the cross means.
Yeah, and
Because
that's what I wanted to check with you. I mean, because the dimensions and the topic on Jesus and his bestowal. I think there's a podcast for everything. But what can they take about away from this? And I think it's very important what you just said. Setting the stage clear of his mission, of his life, of what happened, and the meaning of the cross. Because this is something that even within our readership of the community, a lot of people say, we need to do away from this image and that's the sacrifice and that's the atonement. Yes, that's the symbol that, represents that. But I think that if we rediscover, define the church, I mean, not the church, the cross and the meaning of that sacrifice, it gives it a whole new meaning and it becomes very personal. So yes, I think let's dive into that.
Okay, yeah. We could probably start, and this probably isn't going to make people feel very good, but we could probably start by saying that throughout Michael's local universe, like this up to 10 million worlds, I think it's only 3.5 million right now. We're still pretty unfinished. But everybody in this local universe looks at us, and even though our name is Urantia in the books, we are known as the world of the cross.
Yeah.
Because we used a cross to kill the creator of our universe. And that's just something that we have to live with, unfortunately. We've already talked about this idea that it was not a sacrifice. Jesus did not come here to be sacrificed. And I happy to say that as many times as it needs to be said. There was no fall of man. There was no original sin. Well, this is the logical progression, right? There was no fall of man. We know that because now we know what happened with Adam and Eve. And because there was no fall of man, there was no original sin, at least in that sense. And thus, what are we sacrificing for? Okay, so it was not a sacrifice. Jesus was required for a couple of parts of his mission to be born, live, and die as a normal human mortal. He was not required to die violently. He was required to die, to give up his life at some point, but he was not required to die violently. His death, as what happened, being crucified and stuff, it's like, well, he's the Son of God. Why couldn't he just stop it? The thing was, he was required to live and die as a mortal. So the consequence of his earthly actions. And
And abide by the
unfortunately,
rules
yeah,
of that life, of that,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately, because of the state of the ecclesiastical authority that gripped that whole part of the world, his actions caused them to kill him. And the main means of executing people because of the Romans was crucifixion. So that's why that happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
And it's important to see this, and you know, many things we deem as decrees from God, they're really not, and this is one of them, and
yeah,
we have to set this straight. You know,
yeah,
this was Jesus following, because also he had to follow the will of the Father when he lived his
yeah,
life here. So
yeah,
if the will of the Father is that the the free will of all these creatures, be it that they're mortals, they're the last in the ladder, you know, but their free will still is respected by my will, that
yeah,
they have to choose. And if that means that they're so primitive that they were going to sacrifice you, you know, and because that's the way they are, you cannot override that will, because you're overriding God the Father's will, that says it's their will. So
that's
it's
right.
interesting how he's respecting the will of the mortals, and rather choosing to die than get out of it, you know, because he could have. I mean, that was something, and let
Exactly.
us not
Yeah,
be fooled that he couldn't get from it. It's not
yeah,
that, okay, God just, you know, you can't get out of it. No, he was constantly, and as he was being nailed, and as he was losing his breath on the cross, he was consciously deciding, I cannot do away with the will of these
yeah,
barbaric sons of mine, you
yeah,
know. That's it, that's it.
yeah,
So I think that redefines a lot.
yeah. What makes it transcendent, though, and it is transcendent. Once we get away from the whole realization that there was actually no reason for us to have
Mm-hmm.
killed him, because he was
Mm-hmm.
not there to be sacrificed. So once
Mm-hmm.
once we sort of have to deal with that, we can recognize that there is a transcendence in his actions, though, because
That's
we're told that the greatest expression of love that you can have for your brother or sister is to lay down your life for them.
yes,
He went over and above that, and he laid down his life for those who hated him. How much that is a divine expression of love. And that's what makes this whole thing transcendent.
true, true.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what really shows that nature, you know, that unconditional nature of Jesus. And I also want to bring this in before we close, but I think what's really important is the symbol of the cross, that we all bear a cross. I think that just as Jesus, you know, had this situation that he had to bear, he had to go through this process, hard as it was, but his death had to be a very violent death. And I think that throughout life, we are faced with situations that become our cross, you know, and we're all different, and everybody has a different story. And that cross to us is different in many different ways, but we all have to bear it. And it's the better you can bear that cross, that you can recognize that cross, that you can carry and be nailed to that cross, and go through that sacrifice, and have, you know, this, you know, going that no knowledge that you're going through a process of transcendence, you know, like as we're seeing in what Jesus had to go through, you're going to end up resurrected. You're going to end up at the end of
that's
this
right.
process, you know, completely transformed. So always embrace that cross, and know that we all carry that cross, and we all can be able to transcend and resurrect from that cross. That's what I take from
Exactly.
that message,
Yeah.
you know?
So you mentioned resurrection. We should probably talk about what that means.
Yeah, yeah.
What's that telling us? Um, Fundamentally, he's showing us proof that there is life after death.
Mm-hmm. Number one.
That's what he showed us.
Yeah.
Yes, you die, but there is more on the other side.
Before it was
So
a gamble. It was is that true? And here is a reality,
yeah, I mean, there's no other situation in history that I can think of where proof of the afterlife was ever given in a manner like that.
Yeah. And recorded and institutionalized in a matter
Yeah,
like that,
by
I believe.
hundreds of people.
Yeah.
He appeared to hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So he showed us there's something after death, and this is just the beginning. And he had talked about that anyway, but he actually showed it by resurrecting, and then appearing in what's called a kind of spiritual form, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think that's a good another good podcast
Yeah,
of
we
talking
could
about
get into
his
that too.
nature. Yeah.
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 Okay.
So, the keys to that door of resurrecting are the keys of belief. If you believe, this will happen.
Yeah.
You will resurrect too. And citizenship on the other side requires the exercise of that faith. So,
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely,
So,
brother.
yeah.
Well, I think we can close here because
Okay.
and we're still going to be talking about a lot of stuff. And actually, I have a great news for everybody, all of our audience. We're coming up, and once we finish with this series, which ends with the next episode, which is the fifth epochal revelation, we're going to have a space. We're setting up a platform where we're going to have Derek as our guest invited there, and we're all of you are going to be participating, asking him questions. I'm going to be there as well. And we're going to create a community where if you like and you understand that there's something that you can find in this community and more knowledge of all the things that we're presenting, you can visit us and you can interact with us there. So stay tuned. More to come in our next program. We're going to give more details, but we'll have that soon. So Derek, thanks a lot. I don't know if there are any closing remarks before we go.
It's so important, Jesus coming to this planet. I really don't think we can even begin to fathom how blessed we are to have the creator of our universe actually bestow himself here.
Definitely.
I think we will eventually come to understand it once we're progressing through the
Yeah.
spiritual stages. But yeah.
Yeah, that
We're
will
on the
eventually
upswing
happen.
now. We're on the
Yeah,
upswing. Yeah.
yeah. Awesome.
So,
Well,
yeah.
thanks a lot, as always, Derek, and thanks to all of you that visit us. Remember to subscribe. I mean, we're every week we have shows, but you can also set the alerts. You can invite people, and also if you think that there's something of importance that you can share with other people, tell them to visit us and learn a little bit of what we have to say on this. All right. So till next time, I'm Santiago Neeland. This is the Divine Within. Take care and carpe diem. On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.